All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our very first Shangazi Mentoring Program, Woman of Power Career Corner. We have Miss Keisha Earl today. Miss Keisha Earl is going to be joining us to help us understand her journey in finance. Each month, we'll be hosting a wonderful woman of power that will be talking to us about how they have led such a, the direction to get to where they are in the career path and how they've gotten to where they are today. So I want to introduce Miss Keisha Earl. Miss Keisha Earl is a senior executive at the Vanguard Group based in Malvern, Pennsylvania. Which manages approximately $3.5 trillion in investment assets. As head of the large market investment consulting in Vanguard Institutional Advisory Services, Ms. Earl oversees approximately $30 billion in assets and is responsible for leading a team of senior investment consultants that provides assets, allocation modeling, investment policy consulting, portfolio construction, recommendations, and ongoing investment management to nonprofit and corporate clients. Miss Keisha Earl, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited about your journey and what you may have to share. Now, the Shangazi Mentoring Program is for teen girls. So a lot of the questions that I want to ask you today, it's really coming from our teen girls so that they can understand what it was like for you when you were their age, so that if they are interested in taking a similar path, they may be familiar with, what it took for you to get to where you are. So can you tell us what you were like when you were 16 years old? Describe yourself.
I would say at 16, most people would describe me as, I guess, a little bit of a tomboy. I played sports, and I grew up in a neighborhood on a street of about 10 boys and just 2 girls. So I was definitely very active, and I'd say that largely contributed to me being very competitive in nature. It also probably helped that I am one of a set of twins, so always had someone there that I was competing with.
Wow.
And in high school, I went to an all-girls school in the Bronx, and I played sports there, but I would say largely I'd say best describe me as definitely very intellectually curious. Just a student of, I guess, anything that required practice, which is why I can probably have spent a lot of time playing sports, and a little bit of a math nerd. So that's a little bit of my background.
Okay, well, you said you were a math nerd, so that means you didn't have average grades. You probably did very well in math.
No, I would say overall I was probably a solid B+, A- student. I think similar to a lot of high school students, you tend to gravitate towards the courses that you are best at. And I think by nature, I get highly engaged in any sort of activity that requires lots of practice to be good.
Right.
I pride myself on being able to outwork the person next to me. And so I would say that's why I likely gravitated towards math.
Okay.
Versus some of the other courses like English that were not as, for me, as stimulating because it didn't take a letter. It didn't necessarily require a level of discipline.
Okay. Now, you said you were involved in a lot of different things. You were involved in sports. You were involved in a lot of different activities. Tell us about how your involvement in those activities have helped the things for you currently, professionally and personally, like how it's helped you achieve balance.
Sure. I think a number of ways. First and foremost, whether it was team sports or being part of club organizations at schools, I really valued being part of a team. One, not only working towards a common goal, but understanding the role that I played in a team or a club achieving a long-term set of goals. So I think as a result, I became somewhat goal-oriented. I looked for or understood the value of building strong teams and being around a community of people, whether it was friends, again, club teams, or even people that later on, individuals at work, just the value on bringing together a diverse set of people and that all have a common goal and what that means towards achieving that goal.
Okay, so how difficult was it for you to stay aligned with positive people? Because I'm sure there were a lot of negative people that were, like some of the teenagers say haters, because you were doing so well. How did you avoid the haters, and how did you stay on track?
That's a good question. I would say that, especially for a high school girl who loved sports, it was easy to have haters because I didn't fulfill the traditional norms of what people expected out of a high school girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I developed a little bit of a tough skin as a result very early on. I would say, even at home, I think being being the only girl in a family of three,
mm-hmm.
and from a very traditional Caribbean household, I think my parents had a very traditional idea of what it meant to be a girl at home, being responsible for a larger chores or cooking or cleaning, and that just wasn't what I was trying to do. In the sense that, for the time that most people were spent cleaning, I really wanted to be in the yard shooting hoops.
All
so
right.
I think it boiled down to one, recognizing pretty early and owning the fact that I was going to be different,
mm-hmm.
and I was going to think differently, and I was going to do the things that made me happy or I derived a level of satisfaction from, and to really get comfortable understanding that everyone's got their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, I would say that understanding that the things that made me different weren't necessarily readily available in my community. And by that, I mean, I went to Catholic elementary school,
mm-hmm.
again, more traditional and structured in nature. And so in order for me to fulfill the satisfaction that I derived from playing sports, that meant going to other neighborhoods that had more girls that played basketball. And I had to embrace early. I think it carries over with me as an adult. In addition to playing sports, I am an avid snowboarder.
Mm-hmm.
And you can imagine, I don't know a ton of girls or females from the Northeast Bronx that snowboard. And so that forced me out of my comfort zone
mm-hmm.
to find that population of people, understanding that it would be new friends, new experiences, and in some cases, my old friends that I still love and do other things with, understanding that I can't necessarily build a small group of people that would share all my interests.
Mm-hmm.
And feeling comfortable knowing that I would oftentimes have to push myself out of my comfort zone to find people that had common interests.
Right. It sounds like what you're saying is, for our teen girls, being unique is a good thing. It can push you to higher heights. It can help shape who you are, and it can really define you, and, it can set you apart from the rest. So that is phenomenal. I love that, the fact that you were so comfortable in your skin at a young age, because there's so many images that are out there, whether it be social media, whatever we see on television, that are telling our girls to be something or someone else, but it's so important to be grounded. So considering that you had a lot of confidence in who you were at a young age, did you know what you wanted to be, and why did you think you were going to that particular field?
I would say that for the early part of my life, and I would say junior high school, even early parts of high school, I wasn't 100% clear on what I wanted to do longer term. I would say at a minimum, I knew that I enjoyed math, and I knew I enjoyed areas of study that required a discipline, as opposed to perhaps, something that was more geared towards reading or writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so how I fell into finance is actually pretty interesting. My sophomore year in high school, as we were discussing I guess at that point, the political landscape with Walter Mondale and David Dukakis from running for president, and trying to get an understanding for what drives politics in this country. And as we all know now from the recent election, if we didn't know before, that's heavily engaged in economics.
Right.
And so in this sophomore or 10th grade world history class, we really started to study the rise of World War II, particularly the Third Reich and Adolf Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And through that coursework, I had and developed a new appreciation for how important economics, particularly how it impacts citizens, tends to be a large topic of conversation when it comes to politics.
Mm-hmm.
And individuals who have some concern about political uncertainty and what that economics, which then individual households, is something that is just a very personal decision for a lot of people. Again, very similar to the political landscape that we're in now with the recent election. And in doing that study, I would say I became completely fascinated with economics.
Uh-huh.
And if you ask me, in the 10th grade or shortly thereafter, I had every interest in being an economist.
Wow.
And as a result, I started doing a little bit of research and getting an understanding of which universities had strong economics programs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what led me to later applying to New York University. And for folks that are not as familiar with this landscape, but NYU has a well-renowned economics department. Alan Greenspan, and typically anyone who leads the Fed, typically sets up an academic center at NYU. And I went to NYU with every expectation
Mm-hmm.
of majoring in economics, and it wasn't until I actually probably got to my sophomore year and took a couple of economics classes, loved them, but also realized that, economics was really about the study of economic problems. And then I saw finance as the opportunity that directly offered solutions to those problems. And as someone, again, that's goal-oriented, solution-oriented, finance became much more attractive to me than economics, and I pursued a major in finance.
Well, Keisha, you were so grounded as a teenager. It's amazing. I mean, who was there by your side? Did you have mentors? Who were some of the people that impacted you to kind of really stay strong and stay steadfast in your journey?
I did. I think I had a lot of really strong peer mentors,
Mm-hmm.
which were the direct result of playing sports. And playing sports really early, I quickly, through practice and discipline, excelled beyond my immediate peer group.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, whether it was in junior high school or even high school, I was most often the youngest person on a varsity team.
Okay.
And so as a result, my peer group, because, when you typically on a team, you hang out with those individuals on and off the court.
Mm-hmm.
So what naturally happened is I wound up being part of a social network of women that were a few years my senior.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, I think that they created a peer mentor relationship with me. And I had the opportunity to kind of see some of their mistakes earlier on before I was in a position to have to make some of those choices myself.
Right.
And naturally had the benefit of learning from the mistakes of others as opposed to my own.
Awesome. Now, tell us a little bit about some of the bumps in the road that have come along the way for you from your teen years. I'm sure everything wasn't smooth sailing. It wasn't perfect. What type of roadblocks maybe you stumbled upon, whether it was in high school, college, early on in your career? What kind of roadblocks did you encounter, and how would you recommend our young ladies, go about overcoming similar roadblocks in their future?
Sure. And I've had many. I've definitely had many. But I would say, before we get to some of the very specific examples, what I've learned from my experience with roadblocks in general is they give you an opportunity to reassess.
Mm-hmm.
And you should force yourself to answer the question, what's most important to me, right? Because by definition, everything can't be important, then nothing's important. So you have to figure out what is most important to you. And once you have that realization, it becomes much easier to make the choices or in some cases, sacrifices that are required to achieve your goals. And so if I think about the most significant roadblock I encountered was in college. So I joined NYU. I started NYU as part of the women's basketball program.
Mm-hmm.
I would admit that although I'd excelled in basketball, I did feel like it was a lot to balance academic coursework in high school and in college with playing sports. And I come to the realization at the latter part of high school during recruiting season that I wasn't necessarily sure I wanted to play on a team full-time in college. Mm-hmm. However, going through summer camps, I wound up being recruited by NYU, and I joined NYU as a freshman on the basketball team, primarily because of the scholarship money. I knew my parents were not in a position to afford NYU.
Okay.
And so being on the basketball team allowed me the financial assistance to actually, be part of the freshman class. Mm-hmm. And when I joined NYU, I was counseled during the application process that if I applied to the College of Arts and Sciences, which again, that's where you were able to major in economics, that would afford me the most scholarship money. And then once I decided and declared a major, I should have been able to transfer within any of the 8 colleges within New York University, and there would be no impact to the financial assistance that I would receive.
Okay.
And that was the plan. So I spent my first 2 years studying as hard as I could. I made the dean's list. And then as I was approaching the second semester of my senior year, of my sophomore year, I needed to declare a major so I could make sure I was on track to graduate 2 years later. And when I transferred into the Stern School of Business, which was much more competitive than some of the other colleges at NYU, that year they had made some changes to the financial assistance program, and anyone who was transferring in from another college within New York University, if you did not have a 3.6 GPA, which I did not, would have to forfeit all of their scholarship money except for $5,000.
Wow.
So now, right, at that time, NYU was $27,000 a year, and I came from a very, middle-class family as I mentioned, in the Bronx, and we were not in that position, especially since my brothers were also in college at the same time.
Right.
And I would say that was probably a defining moment for me in my undergraduate career, and I had to make some pretty significant choices, one of which is I could have stayed in the College of Arts and Sciences and continued to major in economics and not fulfill my dream of graduating from Stern with a finance degree. Or I could have, continued to play basketball and see if, that maybe later on things could have been changed. But that would have pushed me to graduate late because now I was literally transferring into the business program at the latest possible moment where I could have declared a major and still graduated within 4 years. And ultimately what I decided was that I'd gone to NYU, and I knew I wanted to major in finance, and I was going to graduate from the Stern School of Business. Mm-hmm. And so I stopped playing basketball, took the reduction in my financial aid, and made up the difference by working full-time while I was a student full-time.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was an unbelievable next 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. Because, while I was hustling to a Wall Street job, it wasn't as if I was working in a student center. I was literally chose to work in roles at organizations that I knew I wanted to explore post-graduation.
Right.
So those full-time jobs were often on trading floors of major U.S. banks or in investment banking departments or in the finance companies, the finance areas of companies like IBM. And although it was a grueling next 2.5 years, I did manage to graduate from Stern, and that experience propelled me into opportunities post-graduation that I never imagined, including the opportunity that I had to work abroad post-undergrad in Frankfurt, Germany for 2 years.
Wow. Keisha, it really sounds like, I mean, that's an amazing story. And it sounds like our young ladies need to listen to that and pull away from the fact that you can achieve despite the fact that there are going to be roadblocks. A lot of women who have made it to the top, like yourself, it hasn't been an easy road. It's a bumpy road for a lot of us. But you got to have endurance. You got to have thick skin, and you can't give up. And look at where you are now. Can you tell us about what your day-to-day life looks like? I mean, what does it look like to be the head, of this major asset group, managing $30 billion? And what's that day-to-day life look like for you? And what's the toughest parts, and what are the parts you enjoy the most for our young ladies who are interested in following in your footsteps?
Sure. I would say the toughest part is continuing to look for opportunities to have balance in your life. Mm-hmm. So as much as I enjoy finance and I enjoy investments and I enjoy my day-to-day work, what's most important to me that keeps me going is making sure I continue to stay active in my personal life. Mm-hmm. So typically my day starts at 5:45 a.m. My alarm clock goes off. I am in the gym at 6:30, out of the gym and at my office by 8:30. And my day is spent typically solving problems. Mm-hmm. I think what's been most unique in the role that I have now is I definitely have a new appreciation for leadership mm-hmm. versus management. Okay. And I say leadership because when you have individuals that report directly to you, that is an awesome responsibility. You are the person that these individuals could potentially be talking about over their dinner table with their families, and the decisions that you make every day mm-hmm. as far as what opportunities are afforded to each one of them, right. How they're compensated, is a big responsibility that you can't ever take lightly, and you have to be in a position to make those good choices every single day. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I derive a level of satisfaction from that, more so than I would do the actual management part of the job. The stuff that people really don't talk about as much. It's the finding expense reports. It's making decisions about how we can continue to fine-tune our investment methodology. How do we, sometimes work with clients to solve problems. Sometimes when we've lost money, someone was negligent in how they manage the client's assets. Mm-hmm. And so a big part of my day is decisions around management and leadership. And I do that probably, I wish I can say it was a 9-to-5 job, but it actually winds up being something much bigger than that, because once you become a leader in the type of organization that I'm in, you are always thinking about opportunities to secure the firm's reputational risk, to secure clients' investment risk, and then also thinking about the professional development of the individuals that, again, support you in that effort. Mm-hmm. And that is almost a 24-hour responsibility. You're always thinking about ways to increase operational efficiency, thinking about ways for clients. We can do more for clients and make sure they, which are typically nonprofits, are focused on the kind of work they want to do every day, mm-hmm. which could be curing cancer, which could be running a religious organization, which could be running a mentorship program, and using our expertise as financial managers to remove that burden from them.
Wow.
So it's a little bit of everything every day.
Wow, Keisha. That's amazing. Now, I mean, you're entrenched in making some major decisions that can impact people's lives, impact businesses' lives and the way they operate. But how about some of the decisions you make on a personal level to impact your life? Like, what do you do for fun when you do have that downtime? What does that look like?
Yeah, and I think that's a good question, because I think that when I talk about balance, it's also making sure that you are consciously making decisions about your personal life mm-hmm. and how you want to spend your time. I'm an avid reader, mm-hmm. So typically magazines, anything that allows me to stay engaged in what's going on more broadly across the world. I love to travel. So in addition to snowboarding, which always gives me the opportunity to be out in mountain towns, I try to do one major international trip every year. and just see some other part of the world. I think one of the things I've learned about myself is that I'm an avid learner. I always want to experience a new culture, new food, understand what makes people in their particular communities or environment. And so traveling is a big part of my life. And it also allows me to completely withdraw from work and be off the grid, which is which is necessary when you typically have roles or responsibilities that force you to be engaged almost 24 hours a day.
Okay, excellent. What's one of the I guess I would say I'm sure you have a bucket list. What's been at the top of your bucket list, and what are some of those things you've achieved in finding that balance and reaching those personal goals?
Sure. So I've been fortunate enough to check off the two top things on my bucket list. The first was to climb and summit Mount Kilimanjaro, which I completed in 2013, which was the longest week of my life. Had no idea what I was getting myself into, but it was definitely an amazing experience. And one of the things I didn't appreciate, in addition to how physically exhausting and emotionally exhausting it would be, I climbed it with 3 other friends, and I think we're bonded for life. Because similar to teams, anything you do with a team or a club or an organization that you're really passionate about, and it requires each one of you to kind of pull your own weight and commit to the journey before you get there, while you're there, and the experience you have, like essentially emotionally unloading once it's done, allows you to connect with other human beings on just a different level. So I would say that's the number one thing that was on my bucket list. Number 2, which was, if you can imagine, a fairly recent addition, like recent over the last 8 years, was to meet Barack Obama, which I did. I had the luxury of elbowing my way in, of some friends that knew a friend that knew a friend that was connected to the president, and so I had an opportunity to meet him.
Wow. What was that like, meeting the president?
That was amazing. And it obviously, for me, it wasn't just about meeting any president. I am a big fan, in every definition of the word, of Barack and Michelle Obama. And it's actually a very humbling experience because, being born and raised in the Northeast Bronx, or from a small, middle class community that's primarily Caribbean, I never would have guessed that I could potentially be 2 or 3 degrees of separation from any U.S. president.
Right.
And so to me, Barack Obama is really more a testament of, I think, some of the things I've been able to achieve, which led me to connect with some of the people I've connected with. And I think that in itself is, he's an awesome individual, and it's great to meet him, and you are definitely in awe of when you have an opportunity to. But I think it was more than just physically meeting him in person and having a few moments to chat with him, but recognizing that a lot of the hard work, a lot of the effort, a lot of the connections I've made, a lot of the work that I've put in to keep some of those connections alive has paid off. And so that's what made it really important to me.
Okay. Now, Keisha, you were able to really determine what was valuable to you at a very young age and stay in line with your own personal truth. I think that speaks to what success is for most of us. Some young ladies may decide they want to go in finance. Some may want to go into healthcare or to law. How do you define success, and what does that look and feel like to you?
I would say that success is being in a position to make your own choices and understanding that the road to success is undefined, and it is your responsibility to define it for whatever it means for you. And by that, I mean, when I was in high school and had aspirations of being an economist, I had to ask myself again, what was most important? And it was the learning, it was the understanding. And then I realized that the providing solutions part of it was more important to me, which led me to pursue finance. And then I worked for a number of years on Wall Street, And as much as I love the intellectual stimulation, I love being around smart people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I love being in a very competitive environment. Almost everything that I had defined as important, I realized in that experience through the financial crisis, for example, that I had a much bigger calling. That I wanted to be in a position where I can do the things that I love while contributing my talents, where at that point I would define as investing for a greater good. And so working with nonprofits and, working with those organizations to help them manage their money so they can provide scholarship opportunities for school students, or they can continue to work to cure cancer, that is, to me, the ultimate combination of success. And I've been able to get there by doing the small things along the way to give me the flexibility to make those choices.
Okay. So,
and I would
go ahead.
And I would say it's the beauty of making sound decisions, financial and otherwise, is that they have a compounding positive effect.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I was working on Wall Street and spending a lot of, essentially saving as much as I could, it put me in a position during the financial crisis when I wasn't working to not have to take the first available job, to allow me the flexibility, to give me the choice to spend the time to make the decision to go to an organization like Vanguard, to work in the capacity that I work now, to work with nonprofit organizations. And so for me, success is, again, giving yourself flexibility and the options to do what it is that you want to do.
Awesome, Keisha. And it sounds like in your current role, you're able to serve, you're able to help, which is amazing. But outside of work, how are you able to give back, aside from, this wonderful time that you're giving to the Shangazi Mentoring Program? How have you found yourself giving back to the community, and why is it important to give back?
Sure. So it's important to give back because you have to put yourself, once you've achieved certain milestones in your life, you can recognize very quickly that you didn't do it just by yourself. That there were other people that, albeit potentially very small or in bigger ways, contributed in some way to your success. They forced you to think about an opportunity in such a way that you would not have considered it did you not know this person. And so being part of a community, whether it's a local community or an organization or at work, that is critical for you to pay it forward, to invest in others that are not in the same position. And so a lot of work that I do is primarily for communities or programs where there are young women who have identified an interest in finance or economics, and really serving as a coach, a mentor, or in some cases even friends, to help them navigate the decision, to help them think more broadly about what are the opportunities out there, and what they need to be doing today to make sure they're in the best position to make the choices so they can have whatever they want in the future.
Okay.
So I do a lot of programs for college students, typically diverse, because I focus on my efforts on working with students who financially or just through exposure won't get similar opportunities. And I spend a lot of time, whether it's public speaking, going down to universities, talking a little bit about my career path, a lot of the work that's similar to the work that I'm doing with you guys here today.
Wow. Well, let me tell you this. I can't get off the phone without asking you, your financial expert, what advice might you give to a teen girl in terms of, her financial future, in terms of like maybe do's and don'ts, I don't know, her spending habits, saving habits, any percentages you'd recommend in terms of savings? And what would you say to a young girl who just wants to get a credit card and, spend her money on clothes every weekend? Like, what would you say?
I would say, one, first and foremost, I recognize being in a position to save is a privilege, right? Not everybody is in a financial situation to always save money. However, also understanding that some of the things that we want versus some of the things that we need. So, and I say that because some of the things that we want, we need to make sure we're able to pay for those things with disposable income or extra money.
Right.
The things that we want, we can't really change that. And so the disposable income piece comes after you've saved. Typically, you want to take 20% of whatever you take home as early in life as you can to give you that financial flexibility in the future so you can make the choices you want to make in the future. But I think that's the number one thing is understanding the difference between needs and wants.
Right.
And the allocation of resources or the allocation of money that you have to finance those needs and wants. And make sure that the want bucket is handled after the savings money, after the money's already put aside from the savings perspective.
That's great advice. That's great advice. Now, Keisha, before I let you go, I have some Shengazis that are on the line. We may even have some of our mentees. If any of you ladies have any questions for Ms. Keisha Earl, now is the time. Please feel free to ask. All right, I hear crickets. So, Keisha, I think we have gone over a variety of questions that are extremely helpful for our teen girls as they continue on their journey to success and their continue to have their spirit of achievement. I would just encourage our young girls to continue to get on these calls, whether you can get on them live or patch into the ones that we have recorded. Keisha, thank you so much for your time. I know that you are an avid traveler. You have a very busy life. You are working on making some major decisions that impact a multi-billion-dollar corporation and many other people's lives. So we really do appreciate your time. I want to encourage our young listeners that, joining our sister circle will continue to give you access like women, like Ms. Keisha Earl, women in healthcare, finance, arts, nonprofit, law, you name it. These are the type of women that we have access to and we want to expose you to on a very regular basis. So please visit www.shengazimentoringprogram.com. Again, that's www.shengazimentoringprogram.com to learn more about the things that we're going to be offering in our Delaware Valley area and beyond. Again, I'm so excited to have you on the call today, Ms. Keisha. This was extremely valuable, and I'm so happy to say that you're a friend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I'll be in touch soon.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.